If a woman says something that quietly destroys your confidence, twists reality, or makes you feel like you are always failing some invisible test, do not ignore it just because you are attracted to her. The most dangerous relationship warning signs rarely arrive with a dramatic ending. Sometimes they arrive as one sentence, spoken casually while you are sitting beside the woman you desperately want to believe in. And that is exactly why you need to pay attention. This is not about blaming women. It is not about assuming every difficult conversation means you should walk away. Healthy people get frustrated. Healthy relationships have arguments. Everyone says things badly sometimes. The difference is what happens repeatedly, how she treats you afterward, and whether genuine respect still exists underneath the conflict. Because attraction can make a man negotiate against his own standards. You tell yourself she is stressed. You tell yourself she had a difficult past. You tell yourself she really loves me underneath all of this. You tell yourself if I become better, calmer, richer, more romantic, more patient, she will finally treat me differently. But compassion does not require you to volunteer for emotional damage. The first warning sign is disrespect disguised as honesty. Maybe she says, "You are not really a man." Maybe she constantly mocks your ambitions. Maybe she compares you to other men whenever she is angry. Maybe she laughs at something that matters deeply to you, then tells you that you are too sensitive when you react. One comment does not define an entire relationship, but a pattern does. When someone repeatedly humiliates you, dismisses your achievements, or makes you feel small so they can feel powerful, the problem is no longer simple communication. It is the erosion of respect. And without respect, attraction becomes unstable. You may still crave her attention. You may still think about her all day. You may still remember the moments when everything felt perfect. But your mind starts learning a painful lesson. Love comes with the price of shrinking yourself. That is not the kind of love you should chase. The second warning sign is manipulation. Manipulation does not always look obvious. Sometimes it sounds soft. Sometimes it arrives through tears, silence, guilt, pressure, or emotional withdrawal. She might say, "If you really loved me, you would do this." Or, "Fine, I guess I just do not matter to you." Or, "You made me act this way." Or, "Everyone agrees that you are the problem." Notice what is happening. Instead of discussing the actual issue, responsibility is being moved around until you are carrying all of it. A healthy partner can tell you, "That hurt me." A manipulative pattern says, "You are responsible for my emotions and my behavior." Those are completely different things. You should be able to hear her feelings without surrendering your ability to think. You can apologize when you are wrong without apologizing for things you did not do. You can compromise without being controlled. You can love someone deeply while still saying, "No, I will not accept being treated this way." That sentence is not arrogance, it is self-respect. And here is where many men make their biggest mistake. They think staying proves loyalty. It does not. Sometimes leaving is not abandoning someone. Sometimes leaving is refusing to abandon yourself. If every disagreement ends with you questioning your memory, your character, your worth, or your judgment, stop asking only, "How can I keep her?" Start asking, "What is this relationship turning me into?" Are you becoming anxious? Are you constantly trying to avoid upsetting her? Are you afraid to express an opinion? Do you feel like affection disappears whenever you disagree? Do you spend more time proving your worth than enjoying the relationship? Those questions matter. The third warning sign is constant criticism, not constructive feedback, not an honest conversation about something you can improve. Constant criticism is when almost everything about you becomes a target. Your clothes, your voice, your friends, your career, your body, your personality, your choices, your dreams. You begin walking into every conversation wondering what you will be criticized for next. That is when a relationship can stop feeling like a partnership and start feeling like an audition you can never pass. A loving partner should be able to challenge you without constantly degrading you, and a confident man should be able to hear useful criticism without accepting contempt. There is a powerful difference between, "I need you to communicate with me more clearly," and "You are impossible to talk to." One addresses behavior, the other attacks identity. Learn that difference because it can save you years of confusion. Remember this. You can love someone and still leave a relationship that repeatedly diminishes you. Self-respect is not cruelty. It is not bitterness. It is not an excuse to become cold. It is the foundation that allows healthy love to survive. And when that foundation disappears, even strong attraction eventually becomes exhaustion, confusion, and resentment. The fourth warning sign is when she repeatedly makes you feel guilty for having boundaries. This one catches intelligent men because it often arrives disguised as emotional closeness. You say you need an evening alone, and suddenly you are accused of not caring. You tell her you cannot answer immediately because you are working, and somehow you are made to feel like your priorities are wrong. You say you are uncomfortable with something, and instead of discussing it, she tells you that you are insecure. You establish a reasonable boundary, and the conversation becomes about how selfish you are. Pay attention to that pattern. A boundary is not a demand that another person obey your every preference. A boundary is a clear statement about what you will and will not participate in. A healthy relationship allows two adults to have separate identities. You can have friends, she can have friends, you can have hobbies, she can have hobbies. You can need quiet, she can need connection, you can disagree, she can disagree. The goal is not to eliminate differences. The goal is to create enough respect that differences do not become weapons. If every boundary becomes a courtroom where you must defend your character, something is wrong. And this is where many men become trapped. They start over-explaining, they send paragraphs, they defend every decision, they try to prove they are not selfish. They keep negotiating long after their answer has already been clear. But confidence does not require endless justification. Sometimes the strongest sentence is simply, I understand that you feel differently, but this is still my boundary. Then watch what happens. A healthy person may disagree with you, but they can respect your right to make a decision. An unhealthy pattern tries to punish you for having one. There is another sentence you should never casually dismiss. You will do what I say if you really love me. Love is not obedience. Commitment is not surrendering your autonomy. Being a good partner does not mean becoming someone without preferences, standards, or limits. And if a relationship requires you to constantly betray your own values just to keep the peace, you are not creating peace. You are creating delayed resentment. The fifth warning sign is repeated contempt. Contempt is different from anger. Anger says, I am upset about what happened. Contempt says, there is something wrong with you. It can appear through mocking, eye-rolling, insults, ridicule, or that little smile someone gives when they want you to know they consider you beneath them. And contempt is dangerous because it attacks the relationship at its foundation. Imagine you make a mistake. A healthy partner can say, that hurt me. Please do not do that again. Contempt sounds more like, of course you did that. You always ruin everything. One leaves room for repair, the other attacks your identity. If this happens repeatedly, do not normalize it. And do not respond by becoming cruel yourself. That is another trap. You do not prove your strength by insulting her back. You do not prove masculinity by intimidating someone. You do not regain respect by creating fear. Real strength is being able to recognize what is happening without allowing it to transform you into someone you do not respect. If the relationship has reached a point where both people constantly attack each other, take a serious look at whether the relationship is actually healthy enough to continue. Sometimes the answer is a difficult conversation, sometimes it is counseling, and sometimes when the pattern is persistent and there is no meaningful willingness to change, the healthiest decision is to leave. But leave with clarity, not revenge. Do not announce your departure just to scare her. Do not threaten to leave every time you argue. Do not disappear simply to make her chase you. Those are games. And games are not self-respect. If you decide to leave, leave because you have recognized that the relationship no longer aligns with the life you want to build. That distinction matters. You are not leaving because she is a woman. You are leaving because the relationship has become incompatible with dignity, trust, and emotional safety. And that is a standard any person should be allowed to have. The goal is not to find a perfect woman. There is no perfect woman. There is no perfect man. There are only people willing to be accountable, communicate honestly, repair damage, respect boundaries, and grow. That is what you should look for, because the right relationship will not require you to constantly prove that you deserve basic respect. It will challenge you, yes. It will frustrate you sometimes. It will force you to confront your weaknesses, but it will not systematically convince you that you are worthless. There is a difference between being challenged and being diminished. Learn it. Because once you understand that difference, you stop confusing emotional intensity with emotional health. And that changes everything. Now, here is the part many men need to hear. Sometimes the problem is not that you failed to recognize the warning sign. Sometimes you recognized it immediately. You simply did not want to accept what it meant. You saw the disrespect. You felt the manipulation. You noticed the criticism. You knew the relationship was changing you. But you stayed because the good moments were powerful. That is completely human. People rarely stay in unhealthy relationships because every moment is terrible. They stay because there are beautiful moments mixed with painful ones. One day she is distant. The next day she is affectionate. One week you feel unwanted. The next week you feel like the center of her world. That emotional unpredictability can make you obsess over getting back to the good version of the relationship. You start chasing the memory of what it was. And that can become a dangerous cycle. You are not necessarily addicted to the person. Sometimes you are attached to the possibility that the person will become who you hoped they would be. That is why you need to judge patterns, not isolated moments. Anybody can apologize after a fight. Anybody can promise to change when they are afraid of losing you. Anybody can become affectionate after realizing you might finally walk away. The real question is what happens after the emotional moment passes. Does the behavior change? Does accountability appear? Does respect become consistent? Does she take responsibility without blaming you? Does she make an actual effort to repair the damage? And you need to ask those questions about yourself too, because self-improvement does not mean becoming impossible to hurt. It means becoming honest enough to recognize what you are participating in. Maybe you have tolerated disrespect because you were afraid of being alone. Maybe you accepted criticism because you secretly believed you were not good enough. Maybe you kept explaining yourself because you wanted someone to finally understand you. Maybe you confused being needed with being loved. That last one is especially powerful. A man can spend years trying to rescue a relationship because being the rescuer makes him feel valuable. But your value should not depend on how much emotional chaos you can survive. You are allowed to want peace. You are allowed to want affection. You are allowed to want loyalty. You are allowed to want someone who speaks to you with respect, even when she is angry. And you are allowed to admit that a relationship is not working without turning the other person into a villain. This is where mature dating psychology becomes different from internet games. You do not need to manipulate someone into chasing you. You do not need to use silence as punishment. You do not need to create jealousy. You do not need to pretend you do not care. You need standards. Standards are simple. I will communicate honestly. I will listen. I will admit when I am wrong. I will respect your independence. And I expect the same in return. If that mutual agreement disappears, attraction alone cannot save the relationship. And if you are dating someone who repeatedly tells you things that undermine your dignity, do not immediately ask, how can I make her respect me? Ask a better question. Is she demonstrating that she is capable and willing to respect me? You cannot force genuine respect. You can demand basic treatment. You can communicate your expectations. You can model maturity. But ultimately, the other person has to choose their behavior. And that is the uncomfortable truth. You cannot love someone into becoming emotionally healthy. You cannot sacrifice enough to make someone accountable. You cannot become perfect enough to prevent someone from disrespecting you. And you cannot spend your entire life auditioning for someone's approval. At some point, you have to decide what kind of relationship you are willing to live inside. Not what looks impressive from the outside, not what makes your friends jealous, not what proves you finally won the person, what actually gives you peace. Because the strongest relationship is not necessarily the one with the most passion. Sometimes it is the one where you can breathe, where disagreements do not become character assassination, where honesty does not become punishment, where boundaries do not become threats, where affection is not constantly used as leverage, where both people can say, I was wrong, without feeling defeated. That kind of relationship may feel less dramatic than the one you are trying desperately to save. But do not mistake drama for depth. Chaos can be intense. Intensity can feel addictive, but peace can be profound. And once you experience a relationship where respect is consistent, you may finally understand how much energy you were wasting trying to earn something that should never have required an audition. So if you recognize these patterns, do not panic. Do not immediately label someone. Observe, communicate, set a clear boundary, watch the response. And then make your decision based on reality rather than hope. That is how a confident man moves. Not impulsively, not bitterly, not desperately, clearly. And now I want you to remember something that can change the way you approach relationships forever. Walking away is not always the first solution, but knowing that you can walk away is what prevents you from becoming trapped. There is a difference between staying because you have consciously chosen the relationship and staying because you are terrified of losing it. One is commitment, the other is fear. If a woman repeatedly disrespects you, manipulates you, constantly criticizes you, attacks your boundaries, or treats contempt as normal communication, you do not have to spend the rest of your life trying to convince her that you deserve better. You can communicate once. You can clarify your standard. You can give room for genuine accountability. But you are not required to remain indefinitely inside a pattern that repeatedly damages your confidence and peace. And remember, this standard works both ways. If you discover that you have been disrespectful, manipulative, controlling, or overly critical, do not hide behind this video. Use it as a mirror. Real confidence is not saying, women are the problem. Real confidence is saying, I am responsible for the kind of relationship I participate in. That means you have to examine your behavior too. Maybe you have ignored her boundaries. Maybe you have become emotionally unavailable. Maybe you have used silence to punish her. Maybe you have expected loyalty while giving uncertainty. Maybe you have criticized her in ways you would never accept yourself. If that is true, own it. Apologize. Change. Because the purpose of relationship psychology is not to give you ammunition against another person. It is to give you clarity, and clarity can hurt. Sometimes clarity tells you that the person you love is not capable of giving you the relationship you need. Sometimes it tells you that you have been holding on to potential instead of reality. Sometimes it tells you that the relationship needs serious work. And sometimes it tells you that you need to leave. Whatever the answer is, do not let fear make it for you. A mature man does not stay because he is afraid nobody else will want him. He does not leave because his ego was bruised. He makes decisions based on values: respect, trust, consistency, honesty, peace, growth. Those are the foundations. And if you are over 60, 30, 20, or somewhere in between, the principle remains the same. Your age does not determine whether you deserve respect. Your relationship history does not determine whether you deserve peace. Your mistakes do not disqualify you from healthy love. You do not have to become perfect before you are worthy of a healthy relationship. You simply have to become honest about what you will accept and what you will no longer participate in. And perhaps the most important thing I can tell you is this: do not confuse being wanted with being valued. Someone can want your attention and still fail to respect you. Someone can miss you and still be unhealthy for you. Someone can feel intense attraction toward you and still be incapable of building a stable relationship. Someone can be afraid of losing you without actually knowing how to love you well. That is why you judge behavior, not promises, not chemistry, not potential, behavior. Watch what happens when she is angry. Watch what happens when you disagree. Watch what happens when you say no. Watch what happens when you succeed. Watch what happens when you need support. Watch what happens when she makes a mistake. Those moments reveal far more than romantic words ever will, and you should be willing to let your own behavior be examined the same way. Because love is not simply about finding someone who makes your heart race. It is about finding someone with whom your nervous system does not have to live in constant uncertainty. It is about being able to disagree without destroying each other. It is about being able to apologize without humiliation. It is about being independent without becoming distant. It is about being close without becoming controlled. That is mature attraction. That is emotional strength. That is the kind of relationship worth protecting. So if you are currently dealing with disrespect, manipulation, or constant criticism, do not make a decision tonight just because a video told you to. Step back, look at the pattern, write down what has actually happened. Separate facts from assumptions. Have the difficult conversation if it is safe and appropriate. Set the boundary, then watch the behavior, because actions answer questions that words often avoid. And if you eventually realize that staying requires you to sacrifice your dignity, your peace, your identity, and your emotional health, remember this: you are not losing your future by leaving the wrong relationship. You may be finally making room for it. Now, I want you to answer one personal question in the comments. What is the one behavior you promised yourself you would never tolerate again in a relationship? Write it honestly. Not what sounds impressive, not what you think other people want to hear, your real answer. And if someone in your life needs to hear this message, send them this video. Sometimes one honest conversation can save someone years of confusion. If this gave you clarity, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And remember, your goal is not to find someone you can control. Your goal is to build a relationship where neither person needs control because both people choose respect.